This episode, replacement of a sewer line. Well, Larry had a sewer line blockage in one of his rental homes that kind of became a nightmare, honestly. And so we tried cleaning it. We tried fixing it from the top. We ended up having to replace it. So this episode is about troubleshooting and replacement of a sewer line. Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition's entitled Replacement of a Sewer Line. And to help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy who loves to play in sewer line things himself, Mr. Johnny. Johnny, what has been going on this week with you? Anything exciting? You been doing playing in any, fun stuff like I have?
Yeah, no, not that way. I've, no, we had a string of some nice weather, so that got me out to clean up a whole bunch of things that I've been putting off, like the yard and some of the woods around me and stuff like that. So I finally got off my butt and cleaned all that up, which needed it very badly after how much after the trees drop all their stuff everywhere. Yeah. It's just never ending. So
it's never ending. All right. Well, folks, before we get started,
take the sewer line away, Larry.
Yeah. Before we get started, we would ask you to like and subscribe our shows, both on YouTube and or on whichever podcast player you play it. It really helps get our word out. We are trying to also do us a favor. Tell your friends if they have anything going on about that. So we really appreciate it. It helps get the word out, blah, blah, blah. All right. So sewer lines. I wanted to start with troubleshooting and how you might realize you have a problem. And this goes in a lot of ways. This applies to septic as well. But the first problem that you always have is, Johnny, what is the first problem you always have?
Yeah, some kind of weird backup.
Yes, that is correct. So you will see that you will start having some very nasty water and or something coming up into the lowest things, which is usually like a bathtub or something like that. And so, folks, this is not a fun thing to have happen, particularly if you're running it, have a bunch of people in your house spending the holidays or something like that. Really not a lot of fun. And unfortunately, that's usually when it happens, when there's a lot of usage. So that's the first sign that you have some sort of a blockage. Blockages happen for a whole bunch of different reasons. It can be anything from putting the wrong things down your sinks or down through your toilets, large things that don't dissolve. We've talked about it ad nauseum about flushable wipes are not flushable in general. Fats, oils, and greases, other things, external things that can cause blockages. And this is extremely common, is like roots from trees. So roots tend to go to water. Guess where there's a lot of water? In your sewer lines, because every day you're using them and flushing. So large percentage of blockages are from roots, and it's really fine hair roots. They create this kind of almost a net, I guess you would say. And it's just all these fine hair roots, aka the reason for the name roto-rooter. Literally, the whole reason for that is they send a spinning blade down into the pipe and clean out the roots, aka roto-rooter. So that is really how you determine if you have a blockage and what you're kind of looking for. I think the first thing, and Johnny, John and I talked about this yesterday. And so one of the first things that you have to look at is, what's the age of your home? And the reason that that's significant is, Johnny, tell us why that is significant.
Well, just what you described as the roots. The longer that your home has been around and the trees have been around, the more the likelihood that they're going to be wrapping themselves around the pipe. And also the pipe could be leaking, and the materials used. Yeah,
materials is one of the things we did want to discuss a little bit.
Yeah, so
what types of pipe are there, John?
Well, I've seen, we used to have the that Orangeburg stuff,
Yep.
which was kind of weird. You had the clay tile. Now these are older homes. I mean, so it goes back to your question to me is, why does it matter, the older homes? Because they used different materials back then. And the length of time and these materials are in the ground and they're wet all the time. They could crack.
Determines their longevity.
Yeah.
Just leave it at that.
Well,
right?
it basically, so if you don't have a blockage because of soft paper or whatever, that's blocking it up, or those wipes or whatever, the grease, if you get the roots in there, man, those things are just, oof.
Yeah, it can be. And the thing is that even clearing the roots out, it's just a question of time before they come back is part of it.
Right.
So I just want to do I want to do a quick little synopsis of materials, and this is just FYI, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But the oldest pipe that is in existence is wooden pipe. Actually, it's made out of wood, and they hollowed out wood. Now, I hope nobody has wooden pipes left.
Yeah, it's like the aqueducts, right?
Right, very much so. But in the far past, I'm going to say 200 years ago, 150, 200 years ago, lots of times they just made pipes out of wood, which is crazy. It took a huge amount of time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, that was the first thing, was wood. The second thing, I think, if my timeline is correct, is clay tile pipe, which is basically, it's just what we say. John said it yesterday. It's like a clay pot, and it really is. You've seen them. You can still buy it. It's clay tile pipe. It's made out of clay, and they make it into a pipe shape, and it's usually got bells on one end, a bell on one end, a bell meaning it slides over the end of the pipe on the two ends. And you just piece these things together. Pretty robust considering its composition. Yeah. I mean, and it was really, really common from, gosh, I'm going to say what, Johnny, probably the 1880s up until into the 30s, maybe past that.
Oh, way past that. It's still, I mean, like you said, you can still get it. I mean, you still get these,
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, this is just for your information.
Yeah.
It's pretty robust. I mean, it's pretty robust. It tends to have issues of all things that you would think of clay, just like clay pots outside. If you got flower pots and things, they're very susceptible to temperature change, like freezing, I'm going to say, because it cracks it very easily. But then we went into two different products past that. And folks, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm about 95% sure. One was cast iron, and then we came to another product called Orangeburg pipe. And cast iron is extremely common in homes, older homes, probably in the 40s out to about the 70s. So that's a 30-year window of cast iron pipe. And cast iron pipe is originally extremely robust because it's steel, it's iron. I mean, it's really robust. The problem is it does degrade through time, so it rusts. It literally rusts. And part of this project, we changed the water line out, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. It was galvanized steel pipe was the water line. We'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, right. And then someone came up with an idea called Orangeburg, and Orangeburg is basically a creosoted type paper that's very, very thick, but it was just wrapped with paper and put creosote on it.
Yep.
And it looks a lot like black PVC pipe, but it is not. It is much softer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting product. We were kind of talking about it. John and I were talking about it on the side, and we're going like, why in the heck would you ever put this in? Well, at the time, it was the latest and greatest, and it was a lot better from an installation perspective and a cost perspective than cast iron because it weighs
a lot less.
A lot is an understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, folks, a 10-foot section of cast iron pipe takes 2 people to move because I've done it. Oh my God. Plumbers in the old days had to be like they were big guys. They had to move this pipe.
And then you've got the old time soldering and all that stuff on those things. And
the lead bells, God, it was all poured lead to seal. It was all poured
lead with that rope around it and everything. Oh man! So all you plumbers out there know how to do that. Hats off to you, because I know you still do it.
I know they still do it.
Yeah, some of you guys still do it. In the big commercial stuff.
And then we came to ABS plastic and PVC plastic,
Yay.
which is what's used today. And again, you have basically all of the advantages, and I can't see any disadvantages in using the products. It's a 50+ year product, probably more like a 70 to 100-year product.
I think your house will be gone before that stuff rots away.
Probably. Yes, probably.
The brick will be gone.
So that's the rundown on the materials. And so what I ran into here was we had a conglomeration of three different types.
Always. And that's exactly, and I'll let you go on here, but that's exactly what we had in our old house. Not us, but when I was growing up.
When you were growing up.
It was like that. It was like the Orangeburg stuff. I'm like, when I was a little kid, I was like, what is that stuff? You know, then you had the big clay heavy pipe, and then you had the cast iron. So
actually we had four. Thank you, John. You just reminded me. We actually had four. So the house at some point, and I did part of it, but when I bought the house, it actually had already been done in PVC. So the house itself was in PVC, and it ran out to a piece of cast iron. So they had made a joint from PVC to cast iron. The cast iron ran out underneath the wall in the home and out to the clean out, which is about a foot off the edge of the house, right? And then it went from there into Orangeburg pipe, which is this kind of paper pipe. And that dumps into the street hookup, which was clay tile, an 8-inch clay tile pipe. How do I know all this? Because we dug it all up. So with that, we had 4 different types of products. We now have 2 different types of products. So I'll get to that in a bit. But what we had in it was we did not. So I want to go back to troubleshooting. So now if you're troubleshooting this problem, you have, okay, so where is the most likely potential blockage happening? In my yard, in this house, right dead center in the yard, there is a tree. That tree was very robust. It grows well. Now here in Georgia, folks, we have what's called red Georgia clay, and this was no different. Red Georgia clay is about the consistency of what, Johnny? When it's dry,
a clay pot.
Yeah, it's like concrete.
It's
almost,
like concrete.
Right?
Yep. I mean, it's I don't know how people dig in it without a equipment.
Well, we rented a piece of equipment. Yeah. We rented a little tractor with a backhoe and a bucket on it because there was no way we were going to dig this SOB up. Yeah. So the first thing we determined, and straight away I say we, it was a friend of mine and I were doing this job together. The first thing we determined is that pipe went right under that friggin' tree, and it did. So we started to dig the tree out. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my goodness. You know,
roots everywhere.
The tap root on the tree was bigger than the tree. It was a good 10 inches in diameter, folks. That's big, right? If you're looking at me, that it was this big around. If you look at my hands, if you're on YouTube, crazy big. Johnny, I resorted to cutting that the old-fashioned way with an axe because my Sawzall was binding up.
Yeah.
So I broke out the axe, folks. Pro tip: sharpen your axe with a grinder beforehand.
Yeah.
What a difference. Wow. I mean, they always say sharp tools, but I felt like, Johnny Lumberjack. It took me no time to get through that 10-inch taproot with the axe. I used an axe because when you're digging underground, I want something I can sharpen is what it is. Cause every time you strike, you're hitting dirt and stuff and you're dulling your blade. But anyway, we took the tree out. Get the tree out. We find the pipe because you have to trace it from that. So this is the other tip. If we're going to do this project, you have to trace it from the house back to where the hookup is, which means you really need to sort of find the pipe. It's going to be you would think it's a straight line, but it's not always a straight line. Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that we came to realize is that this tree actually moved the whole sewer line over about a foot. So trees have, and it does it over time, right? Very long time.
Just like they'll lift concrete.
Just like they'll lift concrete is exactly right. And because they seek out water, they're going to go towards those pipes. I'm not going to say most pipes have have an amount of seepage. So there's always a little bit of water there. Plus the ground has been disturbed. And in Georgia, in red clay, where the ground is like concrete, the roots will go to anywhere where the ground has been disturbed because it's easier for the roots to crawl their way through the dirt. And so, even 70 years ago, I actually noticed when we were digging that as we got close to the pipe, there were 2 things. I could see a bit of a change in color, and I also could shovel it by hand when I got close to the pipe.
Yeah.
And I did do that. I shoveled it by hand as we got close to the pipe because we really didn't want to break the pipe, the old pipe. So that is, that is one of the things. I did want to talk about back on troubleshooting. When do you need to replace? Well, this all plays back into this whole thing of how old it is. So because this house was built I believe in the early 60s on this particular one, and we had Orangeburg pipe, which we had identified. We didn't send a camera down the pipe or anything. That's
a done deal if you can replace it.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And I just knew through time, I'm like, this thing's old. It's just, I didn't even bother to spend the money on cameraing it because I knew it was, I already knew it was bad.
No,
it was going to be bad.
I mean, so how long was the run?
50 feet.
Okay. So that's not that bad.
Famous last words.
So dig it up. Well, you got a piece of equipment, right? I mean, you gotta do. I mean, if it's that old, you gotta do it. I mean, if you're in a newer house and they get roots invasive in there and stuff like that, then you can cut them out. Right. But in your case with that old stuff.
Right. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to have this discussion. It's a little bit about, I want to talk about, is this a DIY project or is this a
that's a good point.
Pay to have it done project. So let me give you kind of the going. I know this is 2025. It's February of 2025. The going rate to do a sewer line right now, roughly, at least here in Georgia, and it might vary, you might have some variation around the country and it depends on where you are, but if it's clear, and when I say clear, meaning there's no concrete that needs to be gone under or anything like that, trees, different story, but if it's clear, it's about $100 a foot, general rule of thumb right now, to replace a sewer line in a thing. So this 50-foot run was going to cost about, we were getting quotes from $4,000 to $4,500.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we used just about 45 feet of pipe. So it was about 45 feet directly out. We bought 50 feet because you got to buy them in 10-foot sticks. Yeah. So anyway, so the thing is that the vast majority of this job is literally digging.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it's dig. I mean, this is not a difficult plumbing job. It truly is not a difficult plumbing job. It's actually a pretty simple plumbing job. All you're doing is mating into the house, which you do. We did it with a Fernco fitting. A Fernco fitting is a rubber, it's got two clamps on it, and you slide the pieces in and clamp it up, and away you go. It's got a little flexibility into it. If you don't know what they are, look them up. They're in every big box store. It's called a Fernco fitting. It's a rubber joint, and they work great.
Yeah, they work great.
They work great. So the hookup to the house is super simple. And what we dug this up, and I've done this before, but into this terracotta or into whatever piping type they're using at the city side, you basically just stick the pipe in there and then you seal around it. And we sealed around it with concrete, just FYI. So pretty simple plumbing job. The rest of it's just glue it. We use PVC, we use 4-inch PVC. We just glued it. So you just like anything, you glue it. You just prime it, glue it, you're good to go. Really, really pretty simple as far as the actual job. Now, the digging of it is where you spend all your time. I mean, all your time. And we rented a little backhoe bucket combination tractor, and we spent, to do the 50 feet. Now, the tree took half a day. I'm not going to lie. It took us a good 4 hours to get that tree out because it had spidered out over the ground, and we cut, I can't tell you how many long roots we cut, and then we blah, blah, blah. It took us a long time to get that tree out. So I'm not going to lie, but we spent about 2 days digging with the backhoe. I mean, with the backhoe. No,
it's a big, well, it depends on what you're digging in, but yeah, it's a big job.
It's a pretty good sized job. I mean, I was just looking at it. I ran something like almost $20 worth of diesel through that machine, which means it ran a lot, So we had it was just a little 25 horsepower tractor with a backhoe bucket combination on it. Anyway. So if you don't have any experience running a backhoe at all, you'll get the hang of it if you understand equipment a little bit. It's really not that difficult, but it's just one of those things. If you don't know how to run a backhoe, you're going to have it done. If you do know how to run a backhoe, you can I saved about $2,000, and that's after paying a guy help me. So I paid about half. You know, it was pretty good.
That's what I was going to ask what you
yeah. Total materials, you know, the 50 feet was probably just around $500.
Yeah.
If you haven't bought 4-inch PVC pipe in a while, holy smokes.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. I can't believe how much that stuff is right now.
It's crazy. And the fittings too. So, you know, we bought couplers, and I'm not talking, the Fernco fitting was about $15. The couplers themselves, they were $7 or $8 a piece. I mean, it's like, yikes, you know? So anyway, it's expensive. Piping
up.
Is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So we dug. Well, of course, what's one of the first things that we happened to catch in the line? We caught the water line.
Yeah, you're lucky. You knew where the electrical was and the gas line, so.
We did. We didn't.
And you said that water line was galvanized.
It was galvanized.
Man, I can't. Boy, that stuff. I couldn't stand that stuff either. We had that throughout our house. Oh.
Yes. And so I'm going to get it. So we hook. Actually, we're digging the tree. This is how this happened. We're digging the tree. We hooked a strap to one of the roots. We pull it up. Next thing I know, there's water coming up around, right? And I'm like, the first thing I thought was that we actually broke the sewer line, and that it was because the sewer line was full of water.
Yeah.
Okay. I could see it in the clean out. It was full of water. So I'm like, oh, great. And then my partner goes and looks at the water meter, and he says, the water meter's moving. You know, like you can see the thing ticking up on so we shut the water off, and lo and behold, the thing stops. So anyway, so we ended up hooking the water line. We pull it out. It's cast iron. We literally, as we pick the pipe up, it folds on itself just from the weight of the pipe. And I'm like, that's it. It's done.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, we replaced the water line too. The water line ended up being here's a surprise, directly over the top of the sewer line. What a surprise. Well, no, not really, because when you're digging the
dig
hole,
one trench.
You dig one trench, you put it in. And we did the same thing going backwards. We put in a 50-foot piece of PVC, PEX, excuse me, not PVC. We put PEX back in and replumbed the whole thing with the water line. But that's what's involved if you're going to do the job DIY.
Yeah.
And it's really a very simple job. So
yeah. Well, no, that's good information. I mean, so folks, this is what you can be faced with when you have something like this backup. You know, I'm sure the first thing a plumber is going to come out and he's going to scope that out, depending upon how old your house is.
Correct.
And then the recommendations will go from there.
Yep.
Because that's the big thing. Whether they jet it out, whether they cut it out, whatever they do these days.
Correct.
But
there's a bunch of ways to clear it.
But some of these, I was going to say, some of these older homes, when you have a backup like that, what Larry's saying is you're going to be faced with this older technology pipe. That if you got trees around, man, those things are notorious for wrapping themselves around there and causing all kinds of havoc.
So I just want to relate part of that story. When we get down close to where we hooked it into the sewer line, there was a root that had grown against this Orangeburg, and it had literally deformed the pipe down to a point where it was an oblong shape, and it looked somewhat like this. I sat there and I looked at it, and it really was about that big. I should have taken a picture, but I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. I'm really bad with the camera. Anyway, and it's on my phone. I should be doing it all the time. But I looked at it and I said, "Oh my God, I'm amazed this thing hasn't blocked up like long before this," because this blockage was upstream of where this was. But this thing was tiny. It had just moved that pipe and actually changed it. So when you get to that point, it's time to change it all out.
Yeah.
So, again, if you're going to pay for it, it's about $100 a foot. Now with this too, I want to say 9 out of 10 times they're going to hit that water line, because almost 100% of the time the guys are going to do just what we did, and just like they did before us, they're going to run that water line up in over the top of the pipe. And again, same thing. If you're in that old house, it's time. It's probably
well,
time.
the biggest part of the project is digging that whole thing out. So once that, how much was the what was that, an inch PEX that you put in there or whatever?
3/4 inch.
So how much did that cost you for the 50-foot run?
50 foot we bought 100 feet. It was $50. It's 50 cents a foot for the cost.
So there you go,
two
folks.
Two fittings. That was it. One was we used a shark bite to go into the plumbing in the home.
Yeah.
And the total cost of materials for the water line was less than $100 total cost. And I know that a plumber is going to charge you $1,000 to do that.
Well, if it's already dug,
he's going to charge you $1,000, Johnny, because he's going to put the fear factor in you.
Well, but anyways, folks, if you're going to do this, the point here is, at least in my mind, is that, if you run into a situation like Larry here and you had in the pipe, you might as well just get it done.
Just do it.
You might, because if, man, that old cast iron, that stuff, I just remember, because it not the cast iron, but the galvanized stuff, it just starts to get rusty and, oh, it's a mess. Just get rid of it. Your
iron content in your water is extremely high because this stuff inside of this pipe was rusted out like crazy.
Right.
Yeah, it was rusted out like crazy. So it just, now is the time, but these are just some things that, as we talk a lot about planning and about doing things, and doing them in a timely fashion. Just do it all. If you're going to do it all. It's not going to cost you, it shouldn't cost you hardly anything more. The dig was the big expense. Just do it when you can do it. You know?
Yeah.
Johnny, any other questions? Anything else?
No, I don't have any questions. I mean, folks, leave us some comments about if you guys have gone through this. I'd love to know what your experience with that is. I think Larry pretty much covered all the bases on this. I just remember those old materials, especially that Orangeburg stuff. I always wondered when I was a little kid, I didn't know what that stuff was. There's a piece of it laying around in the basement, and I'm like, what the hell is that thing? It's weird stuff.
It's weird.
So anyways,
Johnny, do you think they have Orangeburg in the spaceships?
I don't know, Larry. I was going to ask you about a blockage. So
killing me here.
You guys out there.
We'll just let that one lie. We'll let that one lie, Johnny. We'll let that one lie. All right, folks, if you would, please like and subscribe our podcast. We appreciate it. If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, you want to hear a show, you've got any ideas for topics, if there's something you'd like to know, send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. We do respond, and we do like to put those shows out there because this show is about you. It's not about us. We do this stuff all day long. So, again, send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. We're out there on Facebook as well, @HandymanPros. We post some pretty good stuff pretty often. And with that, Johnny, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Take us home, baby.
All right, folks. Stay safe this week, and we'll see you next time on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.